Welcome to the Intelligent Business Show, a podcast from Aberdeen discussing the latest trends to keep you and your business at the top of your class. And now, here's your host, Aberdeen's CMO in residence, Matthew Grant.
Hello and welcome to the Intelligent Business Show, the podcast that focuses on the ways that organizations just like yours are using data to make their business more intelligent. I'm your host, Matthew Grant, CMO in residence here at Aberdeen. This week, we're speaking with Brad Killinger, CEO of Sapience Analytics, an enterprise workforce analytics and efficiency solution delivering actionable visibility into work patterns and behavior in an organization. I've been particularly curious about data and intelligence in the realm of workforce management, so I invited Brad to the show to talk about it. Let's dive right in. So, Brad, when we were talking before the show, you had referred to Sapience Analytics as a Fitbit for organizations, and you'd also said that it helps companies actually understand how work happens at their organization. So I was just wondering if we could start out by you telling us what types of data does your solution capture that actually helps companies understand how work happens?
Yeah, absolutely. And first of all, thank you, Matthew, for inviting me to be on the show today.
Yeah, no problem.
Looking forward to the conversation. So, from my perspective, I would start out and say, as we start to talk about people analytics, I think it's very important that we understand kind of what it is and what it is not.
Yep.
So for starters, people analytics really monitors work patterns and general activity without gathering any personal information.
Okay.
And so we are much different than, what you would think of as kind of traditional surveillance.
Yeah.
What this technology really is aimed at doing is providing a 360-degree view of how employees spend their time at work, where the bottlenecks might be in that work, what types of distractions that they may be, being encountered with during that workday. And it really, is able to capture all that data, and it does it, silently in the background of an employee's computing environment, which entails, both their PC, their VoIP phone, their mobile, and puts it together with deep analysis and analytics in such a way that you can collect the activities and how to, drive better employee engagement, how to potentially drive more efficient allocated resources, and in doing all of that while in no ways infringing upon any of their personal privacy or any sort of privacy concerns. And so that's a big goal and aim of what we're doing.
Sure. So I guess so I get that you're not capturing this information or personal information, private information, and the types of data. You're basically collecting data on any connected device, it sounds like, because I was curious about, our sales folks here, of course, spend a lot of time on the phone, but they have voice over IP systems, so again, it's going through their computer. But I know it's one thing, and this is the thing we see with Google and Facebook and everything nowadays, it's one thing to tell people we're not collecting any of your personal information, but of course, I don't believe it with Google or Apple or any of those companies. So, so what are the things that you guys do, or does this even come up that you have to convince the employees that, yep, there's this thing on your computer or on our systems, it's monitoring, but you don't have to worry, it's not looking at your emails or whatnot?
Yeah, so we don't, what our system does, there is no screen scraping, there is no keystroke logging, and we're really capturing the time that was spent inside of the application and mapping that back to how a client would see that. So are you doing working in a marketing application? Are you doing email, which would be communication and collaboration? And so we're capturing what that signal is, that somebody's working inside of that application, but nothing about what they're doing, what they're saying in an email, and even to the point that if an employee is sitting down and let's say it's we're around the holiday season and somebody goes out and buys a gift on Amazon.com, we're not reporting that anywhere that even they were Insight or at Amazon.com were literally just saying that, hey, they were not participating in a core, work activity for that 15 minutes of time.
Yeah.
And again, when you build up what the day in the life of an employee is, we also don't believe that, all that time is bad. But we would never report. There wouldn't be a manager. There's no report that comes out of our system that would know they were at Amazon. We just know that they weren't working, doing something that had been defined as their kind of core work activities.
Right. So I guess, so you're saying, I guess the question still remains in a sense. I mean, I totally get what you guys are doing. Are there things that you have to do or that implementing organization has to do to sort of convince employees that this isn't some secret backdoor monitoring thing? Or does that not even come up?
Well, it obviously, it comes up, I think, any time that you feel like, hey, there's something here that's collecting information on what you're doing, that probably sends up that red flag anywhere. And I would say two things. One is when we do implement it at new clients, we go through extensive, robust training program so that we can not only educate what it is that the employees, so that hopefully we can give them a sense of exactly the stuff that we are collecting, and then what is that information being used for. And then we also, spend significant time training the managers about, okay, once you start getting this data in again, how can you use that in a constructive way? And what we find is, yes, up front, you tend to run into this initial pushback that says, look, this, is this big brother? But what we find, after somebody gets used to using it, is a true appreciation around the product and what they have. Because a lot of what we do, we create very transparent relationships between employees and management so that they're able to understand, hey, what are my goals? Where's my time being spent? Am I being measured in a fair way? Mm-hmm. By the way, managers can start, literally giving time back to employees, because when you see that, maybe at first, one of the biggest aha things that we always hear is that employees that start using the Sapience platform is they will literally sit back and go like, wow, I had no idea where my time was spent. So they're coming in and spending a significant amount of time, working in the office, dedicated to their job, but you don't really realize like how that time was allocated. And so when they start seeing a scenario where they can actually get time back, back on the calendar, get home sooner, we're seeing employees that see big benefits from it, being able to do work from home arrangements, which is a big area, and we can, go further down that road.
Sure.
The whole engagement experience is different. I mean, you're really changing from what's been manual reported systems and kind of people's gut feel to where now you can really start having a data-driven approach to managing and setting goals and being able to run your business much more effectively.
Yeah, and no, I mean, because I think the main way I think I've seen this stuff happen before when you're trying to do efficiency or productivity analysis with your employees, it's basically self-logging or kind of journaling of what's happening. So, okay, for the next 3 days, I want you to write down what you do, for different times. But unless it's really, the beauty, of course, of the type of solution you're describing is that it's happening in the background and it's not up to self-reporting and whatever. I'm not saying that people intentionally fudge it, but when you get in the middle of stuff, you forget to do it, or you go at the end of the day and try to recreate what you did because you weren't really paying attention at the time. So this definitely seems much more, obviously, a more effective and efficient way of doing this. And you're saying that one of the things that employees end up appreciating about it is that they get insight into how their time is being spent?
They get incredible insight and can start seeing even, where if they want to see what the work behavior patterns are of top performers in the organization, you can start thinking through, wow, how should I be spending my day? We've done, where they're showing comparisons of teams and different countries. And so you have similar tasks and you go, okay, what was the outcome? And I think there is, one of the big areas from my own perspective is that it really takes a lot of, I would say, gut work and guesswork. And my experience has been, there has been, we have them today. I mean, there's a lot of employees that do a fantastic job. And as a leader, sometimes you don't always realize that of exactly where that pocket, maybe they're not as visible or don't know how to play office politics as well, or whatever the case is. And I can tell you, in using this product to manage our own company, that I look through it on a weekly basis, and you use it as a way. I'll see people that pop on that just really did a great job last week, who may be a CEO of the company. I'm not interfacing with them on a daily or even monthly basis, but I'll take the time and drop an email and say, hey, great job. I can I've seen the work patterns and we're appreciative of that. And so I think there's a whole different way to drive around employee engagement. And I think that one of the, I just come back to two other points is that one is around the privacy piece. One of the interesting things that we tell our clients is when we start the journey and they go, oh my goodness, is this a breach of privacy? I'll look at them and say, for years and years, companies have collected every single digital thing you've done. But usually the only way to manifest that is you would hire in a large team of consulting experts who might, reconstruct because you're being audited or there's some other reason that you're getting that level. And so I go, first of all, we're not down at that, kind of surveillance type level.
Sure.
But everyone's already being tracked. So to kind of pretend they're not is probably not a great place or a great assumption. And I think then, so that was one. And then I look at it, and if I just go back to the comments you made around manual time reporting, one of the things when I first looked at this company that got me really excited is my whole career I've been or tried to be as high performing as I could be. And I kind of laugh because I go, back before I was in leadership jobs and I would have to account for my week, every Friday would come and I'd look back and go like, wow, I can't remember exactly what happened on Monday. I can't remember what happens on Tuesday. And so everywhere from even a company trying to really understand, hey, what was I doing? Where was my effort? They kind of get a general idea, but nothing really actionable. And the second part then became when you went to accounting. And so I earlier in my career, I worked for some services companies where sometimes if you didn't have a project to bill to, we'd be out finding partners that would give us charge codes. And I used to think to myself, well, how can this really be accurate even to try to get your proper project accounting, et cetera? And we changed that. It goes from a manual place where an employee doesn't have to do any of that. That data is already captured, and you can use that in a number of different ways, which is a very neat thing. It almost provides a continuous time and motion study that runs in the background, and without having to spend a fortune to try to do that with a team of consulting experts.
Yeah. No, it's interesting that like what you just said too, and it made me even feel like my original question about the privacy piece was a little naive. I mean, in the sense of, I know your response to that is, of course, well, we're not looking at content and all this other stuff. So you had a totally appropriate response to that. I think the second thing, what you just said now, though, is kind of the let's get real response. Like, if you don't think that your company is already monitoring your web traffic and, your companies, the courts have weighed in on this. Companies own your email. That's not your personal property. That's theirs. And you discover that when there's as you said, you're getting audited or there's a lawsuit and they're doing digital discovery and what's happening. Like, it's not – I think it's a reminder of a way that people are already – though I think there is a sophistication growing, but people are already sort of, naive is the word I used before, about what's actually happening. All the traffic, anything that's happened within your computer or if you're on this company network, the log management system is literally tracking everything that's happening. So that, and it's just, again, you had to have, digital forensics experts come in, or some sysadmin would have to pull some very specific report to get that stuff out. And again, you only did it when, we got to prove that someone did something bad or didn't. I like your idea of like, no, let's kind of move what we're tracking kind of up the chain, but also make it more interesting and applicable to what people really care about. How can I do my job better? How can I get rid of tasks that take up too much time? Everyone in management wants to know, how can I help people work better and not waste their time doing things? And this gives you, as you're saying, immediate insight into that. I was interesting. So, but this, as we've been talking about this, I have been wondering about, is this solution really better suited for a particular size of organization or a particular type of organization?
So I don't think size matters as much. I mean, we have organizations, so we have clients that have 200 people all the way up to, I think our largest now has over 55,000 people that are using Sapience. So I'm not sure size is probably the measuring mark. I would say in terms of, and I don't think industry, I think anybody that has, kind of their primary job is working in or around, call it digital equipment, or, whether that's more PC-based or phone or et cetera, we can drive significant value for that.
All right. And so then the other thing I was thinking about is when you were talking about the thing you're doing is you're tracking activity within core applications. So that got me thinking about what kind of preparation, and this may actually just be part of your onboarding process, but it sounded to me like one first thing you'd have to know, you'd have to go through the process of, for each particular role, defining the core set of applications and things like that. So in general, my question here is, how does an organization need to get ready in order to deploy this and actually get the value out of it that you've been describing?
Yeah, so I would probably start around this answer with saying, so number one is usually when at least our clients have come to us. So the first is really a definition around what is it they're trying to achieve. Mm-hmm. Are they having an attrition problem? Are they trying to drive greater productivity out of a organization? Are they is it about employee wellness and engagement? Or we've seen is a better contingent workforce management. We have a number of areas, but I think number one is to understand what is the target goal that you're going after. In terms of our software, it takes us, in general, about 2 weeks to get the system up and running. Within the first 30 days, we start delivering back the reporting and analytics that I think people then start to get a good sense. There's a bit of an iterative aspect. So because the system has so many different configurations available to it, mm-hmm. I think that goes back to setting the goals, because we're running this for some companies in what we would call anonymous mode, where it's literally just team level and organizational level tracking, where I'd say there's, in that scenario, they're more interested in figuring out kind of capacity management of the organization, what types of insights can you really derive from that, all the way down to where you have open mode, which is the type of configuration where the manager can see at the end, individual end user level type data, what an employee is doing, and you can get much more granular in terms of going down, in that direction. And so I think number one for us is being able to set it. The second part is then, the actual, load and implementation of the software is easy. And I think like anything over time, you're constantly going to update, what's on the approved list, what's not on the approved app list. And you start to you build that, and I think that evolves. But out of the gate, we can find that sitting down with the managers and inputting. I mean, they can define very, very quickly in terms of the things that they, believe offhand. Like, I've got this team of employees. Here are the applications and even websites or SaaS applications, et cetera, that we should be doing to achieve our day. And I think the other interesting part for us is we correlate or ingest the calendar information, so we know on PC time, when they're in scheduled type meetings, et cetera.
Right.
Again, all in the effort to really put together that full view of what's happening in the 9 hours that the individual comes to work.
Right. So I'm wondering, what are ways that, well, I have two kind of remaining questions as our time as we approach the end here. I guess the first question is, what are the surprising types of things that organizations realize once they start seeing the data that you're able to provide to them?
Yeah. So I would give this. Let me start at a general metric, and then I can get specific. Is that
all right?
If for a 5,000 person company, a 1 hour improvement per day in that workforce of doing core productive activities translates to about $400 million to the bottom line.
Wow.
So there's significant value. Just when you start looking at what happens if you can start impacting these areas. So specifically for us, we generally find that getting an hour more of increased effort on PC for an employee each day is not an overly hard task. It's more about just raising that consciousness. Mm-hmm. We generally will see that leads to a 1.5 hour increase per employee on core work activities. We will see that a lot of workflow challenges where work was properly or improperly allocated, thus freeing up significant cycles. We will also see, or it's interesting with the data provided of how you can start seeing your future workforce trends based upon history, so you can do a lot better capacity management. And from that we also are seeing significant amounts of improvements in relationships with contingent workforces. Namely, I mean, most companies now, they're anywhere from 20 to 30%, in some cases even higher. And so that relationship is just as important as a quote unquote kind of direct employee. And so understanding are the right service levels set, or you paying the right price in a managed services agreement. Are you really getting everything that you think you're paying for in terms of time, et cetera? And so that's been a big area where we've had a fair amount of success. And I think then finally is that by being able to really see how the work is done, when it's done, where it's done, and who it's done by, you start getting into a place where you can start modeling or saying, hey, here's my top 20% and how they're driving so much value. Like how do we apply this to the bottom 20% and the mid 60 to really pull the organization much further and try to replicate and change some of those folks. And then the final piece for us is that our data also is helping a number of our clients to really be able to accelerate some of their process improvement and RPA initiatives. So where they can find that look, we have roles that there's ongoing repetitive tasks which drive high attrition, low employee engagement. Is there an opportunity here where we can move that employee on to something more higher value add and potentially develop a bot or whatever that can help automate some of those processes? That's another area where we're seeing kind of real life transformation.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like a lot of this comes down to kind of removing guesswork and, as you said earlier, gut work around stuff. So on the one hand, as you had mentioned earlier, I think about top performers, it's again, the classic kind of old-fashioned way as well. I'm going to talk to the managers. I'm in HR or whatever. I'm going to talk to the managers. They're going to recommend the best employees as far as they're concerned. I'm going to interview them. I'm going to try to model what they're doing or whatever. And you're actually giving some data around that. Well, now it's not just, again, as we said earlier, self-reporting or interview-based stuff. We can actually see what people did. Something you had mentioned earlier before. You had said, because I think one of the things that people struggle with is we have management can often have a very rigid notion of how work is supposed to happen. And even as you said before, the 9 hours that you're there at work, it's just this thing we've just inherited. No one even thinks about it. I mean, it's better than, I guess, in the 19th century where we had to work for 15 hours or 20 in the coal mine. But like,
Yep.
you know what I mean? But now, so we got the 8-hour work week, and now we just take it for granted that's just an empty space, the 8 hours. And yet so on the one hand, we're managing our employees by the hour, but in terms of what we're doing and a lot of the way work happens, it has nothing to do with hours. And it tends to be very project-based nowadays. It's just very output-based. And we try to kind of say, well, how much output can I get in 8 hours? But rather than thinking, for this company to function and be successful, what needs to get done in a certain time and a certain, over a week or a month or a quarter or whatever, it's not then about, what really mattered was that my employees were in the building, from 8 to 5. What matters is what happened. And it seems like this kind of technology allows leadership to actually change how they're thinking about the work. And so you're not just focusing on, well, if someone's here for 9 hours, I'm assuming they're getting everything done. Instead, you can say, well, what we need to get done can happen and can happen very efficiently, say in 7 hours. And that actually changes what I am forcing my employees to do, which again is then going to have a big impact on engagement and attrition and things like that. Am I misreading what you're talking about, or is that a way for people to think about things?
It's an absolute way, and I can give you a real life client story, which is a great example that I love to show. Is that we had a customer who, in their trade reconciliation group or one of their teams, one of their big challenges from HR was that they had something. It was like a 60% overall attrition rate within the first 9 months.
Holy cow!
And specifically, they had almost a 90% attrition rate amongst females. And so they had a real challenge of saying, hey, we've got this really important operation, and we don't know, why. Is it the environment? Is it this and that? And what they found out is when they got the work is that they were very wed to being kind of this traditional come to the office Monday through Friday, 8 till 6 o'clock. But that is not when work happened for this team. Mm-hmm. So what they were finding is everyone would come to the office, and guess what? Like Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, the team would kind of sit there and watch the carpet grow because there just wasn't a lot of work volume. And what was happening is then starting at like Friday at 4 o'clock, they had to get all the I'm not an expert in trade reconciliation.
Me neither.
They had to do whatever it is that they do in that job. And they were working late into Friday night, all day Saturday, all day Sunday.
Man.
And after a while, employees just, you say it's just not worth it. And they'd find a different job. And so once they were hit with the hard fact pattern, because there was kind of a common belief like, oh, we all have to put in some time on Saturday. And you start being able to see like, look, everyone's leaving here because we're trying to mirror this. So what they did is actually implemented a flex time policy, mm-hmm. where they started putting, people, okay, listen, you can have, Monday and Tuesday off. We'll just keep a skeleton office in case there's some burning fire, but we'll let, people have those days off. And they started splitting Saturday and Sunday shifts and half day Wednesdays. And they played, well, they're so proud today to say that they have a 95% retention rate.
Holy cow.
And so they've been able to, rethink what you just were talking about, which is this notion of, hey, need to be there at, 8 or get out of there by 6. And that's got to be Monday through Friday. And they've actually adjusted now the team and the expected hours and effort around when the work really has to get done. And they've been able to use the Sapience platform as kind of the scorecard to do that.
Yeah.
And so that's, I think, one great example for us. And we're seeing this now more and more for companies. Also, I would just say, looking at that whole relationship of work from home. So is there an opportunity to have less of these really expensive facilities? If you look at a lot of the global surveys and data, it's becoming more and more important for employees to not want to commute an hour every way 5 days a week and deal with that. So when an employee can say, okay, look, or an employer can say, you can work from home 2 days a week. We provide a natural scorecard, which I think is simply brilliant, of where they can sit down and be able to show, look, I haven't lost any productivity from going home. And I think a lot of companies, it's going to help them really to understand, because again, even that argument, and I've had it my entire career where I've worked from home, and then the next company doesn't want you to work from home, and it's almost like this gut instinct, depending on whoever is leading what organization. Yeah. We can put some fact into that decision making, and by the way, maybe it won't work for all companies working from home, but or all roles. But what we find is actually, it's pretty interesting. Is we did a study, across, I think it was about 40 of our clients who are using us in this work from home, and people working at home were driving almost 1 hour more of productive core work a day than when they were in the office. And so I actually say that to a lot of senior executives I go out and meet with and go, regardless of your perspective, we can show you actual data that suggests that this may not be the bad deal, because often companies don't want to. They either feel like they're losing control, or they're not sitting outside of their right under the boss's nose. Then they couldn't possibly be doing anything, and our data is actually suggesting something different, which is quite interesting.
Yeah, and I also think that that's supported by other studies about this. Again, as we've moved more towards self-management, and frankly, people want autonomy. And as you mentioned robotic process automation earlier, if there are jobs that you need to have someone watching you like a hawk because essentially you're working like you're Lucy on the assembly line, I feel like those are jobs that humans don't have to even do anymore. And if giving both the employer, who unfortunately, for good or ill, has a sense of they need to maintain control, and the employee, giving them more sense of control over their time and allowing them, as you said, often, they have to make the case. Look, it's not going to be worse if I work from home. In fact, you might get more out of this. Now, it's not just he said, she said, or self-reporting or something. You can actually have a system of record as saying, look, this isn't just someone's personal perception or their belief. This is actually what's happening. So, Brad, I think that our time is up here. I just wanted to thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing this very interesting stuff that you're doing there with Sapience Analytics.
Matthew, thank you so much. I appreciate your time today. It's been a pleasure.
All right, thanks you. For me as well. All right, and audience, thanks for listening. We're going to be taking a break for the holidays here, and we're going to be back with a new show on January 8th. You're not going to want to miss it. So I'll just say Happy New Year, and see you then.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Intelligent Business Show. You can find this show on iTunes and Spotify, as well as on YouTube. And be sure to follow us on Twitter at Aberdeen_show. And if you want to know what's going on in your market space, be sure to check out Aberdeen.com.